Okay, so the last video was, make it large. Okay, the last video was about 2 minutes shorter than I intended, but oh well. Uh, but I've started my timer, so that's something. Anyways, let's start with the 18th dynasty. The 18th dynasty is arguably the most famous dynasty in all of Egyptian history. One of its last and most famous pharaohs was Tutankhamun. Tutankhamen. There are variations in the spelling of his name. And there is his rather odd father, Akhenaten, or Amenhotep IV, who briefly switched Egypt from polytheism to monotheism. And there's the guy who historians call the Napoleon of ancient Egypt, Pharaoh Tutmosis III, who, according to Egyptian history, never lost a battle, but whose death is somewhat mysterious. There are some significant indicators that Tutmosis III was the pharaoh of the Exodus, and we will cover why later. If one knows what to look for, the mummy of Tutmosis III in the Cairo Museum does reveal some interesting secrets. There is Pharaoh Hatshepsut, the only woman who truly became a pharaoh, and who my research points to as being the Egyptian mother of Moses. Tutmosis III reigned about 430 years after Amenemhet III, the pharaoh who elevated Joseph, and more than 600 years after Mentuhotep II. The 18th dynasty gives us the confirmatory ability to calculate when the slavery of the Israelites began in earnest, and other details such as who was ruling Egypt just before the 18th dynasty and why this is important. Usually, when we want to know when something happened, we look it up on the internet. We can look up the date for when the event happened, who was connected, and perhaps when they died or were born. So we subtract the date in question with the current date in order to know how many years ago the event in question happened. When calculating dates before the birth of Christ, we need to add in order to go further back in time to a correct date. So you can see me in that picture down there. It was so bright there, and I had difficulty seeing anything without sunglasses. Anyways, so this is some chronology. You can see the chronology on the bottom from Mentuhotep II to Moses. And then there is on the side to the right, you see that's Hamos the First, and then below him is Amenhotep the First, and then below him is Thutmose the First. Okay, so Amos reigned for 25 years, 550 to 525 BC. In a later episode, we will cover various details that archaeology and history tell us about how this pharaoh enslaved the Israelites, as well as various indicators regarding his motives. Amenhotep I reigned for 20 years. This pharaoh would naturally have tightened the grip on the Israelites that his conqueror father, Ahmose I, would have established. Tutmosis I reigned for 13 years, 1506 to 1493, give or take a year or so. There are some indications he had a co-regency with Amenhotep I in the initial 2 years of his rule. He also married Amenhotep I's daughter. Tutmosis I and Amenhotep I had the same problem, and that was that they both had full royal daughters but no full royal sons. There is unverified speculation that Tutmosis I was related to Amenhotep in an illegitimate manner, and that he had been a high-ranking soldier before he became pharaoh. This would be a similar path that his grandson Tutmosis III would follow. Because Tutmosis I had no royal sons, he decided that his full royal daughter, Hatshepsut, her name means foremost among noble ladies, should marry his illegitimate son, Tutmosis II. And that is what happened. There are also indicators that Moses would have been born within the first year of the reign of Tutmosis I. The mysterious death of Tutmosis III occurred in 1425, and as the pharaoh of the Exodus, Moses would have been 80 years old when this guy died. If we go back in time and add 80 years of Moses' life, what date would we arrive at? 1425 plus 80 equals 1505 BC. I forgot to add the BC, which is within 1 year of the beginning of the reign of Tutmosis I. So we can say that Moses was probably born around 1505. I forgot the BC again.